my name is Anna. I'm a book-obsessed metalhead, and welcome to my fantasy world. And today I wanted to give my thoughts on the Mortal Engines series by Philip Reeve, because I have just finished the 4th book in the first series. So there's a prequel trilogy. There's another book about Anna Fang, and there's a prequel trilogy that I haven't stuck my teeth into yet. But in the meantime, I've just finished the fourth book in this series, and I want to talk about it. So, reading this series has taken a bit of time because this is the series that my dad was reading when he passed away. He was a big fan of steampunk, and because when he was in hospital, it was during COVID, so they couldn't have books from the library, and he couldn't have visitors. I was the only person who was allowed to visit him, and so he was asking me to fuel him with books. So I bought the Philip Reeve series, I bought the steampunk series by Cherie Priest. I also bought Ever Fair by Nissi Shaw, and some books and Michelle Paver's Ghost Stories, because he really liked Michelle Paver as well. So anyway, I a lot of the books that I own, the steampunk books, were supposed to be for my dad. And this is the series he was reading when he passed away. And I'd read the first book and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it took me a bit of time to get all the way through. But I wanted to mostly go over this series as a whole, just the whole kind of concept of it, because Philip Reeve really created something very unique. But so this series is set on an Earth that is so far-flung in the future. We are talking over 1,000 years into the future. We don't actually know what year it is, because all information history has pretty much all been lost. Cities have been destroyed. They refer to this war called the 60-Minute War, where we assume that there was a nuclear explosion. Something happened that destroyed a lot of the world as we know it. And in order to survive this new world, it was decided by a certain percentage of Earth that remaining cities, couldn't remain in one place, that they had to move around. So they were mounted on great big traction engines, and they roam Western Europe, or what is left of Western Europe, and they eat each other. So a bigger city will consume a smaller city and take the parts in order to sustain its own engines and tractions and whatever, and the people from the smaller city can then go live in the bigger city, or so the main character thinks at the beginning. So the first book is told mostly from the point of view of Tom Natsworthy, who is an apprentice historian in the city of London. And Tom isn't the sharpest tool in the box. He's very naive, and he does very much believe in this myth that London is the greatest city on earth, and that it's okay, it's normal for them to eat other cities. This is how it works. And that it's not a problem for the other people in these smaller cities. Then they get to live in the biggest and most wonderful city in the world. What actually happens is they get turned into slaves. So he doesn't ask questions, he doesn't think about anything, he's just like, yay, this is my great city, I love it. Until his world is turned upside down by this man called Valentine, who is an archaeologist and trying to dig up these very special relics. Meanwhile, the engineers of London are trying to create a very deadly weapon known as Medusa, and this girl called Hester is trying to escape her living dead companion, and they end up being helped by this lovely aviatrix with her dirigible called Anna Fang. And the reason London is creating the weapon Medusa is because the Traction League, the League of moving cities, are at war with the Greenstorms. So the Greenstorm believe that cities shouldn't move around, they should be sedentary, and instead of churning up the earth and destroying all vegetation and all animal life, they should be making the world green again. And these two factions are at war with each other. So there are 4 books in this series, and a lot of stuff happens. And one of the things that I find so amazing about it is, this is a YA series, by the way. One of the things I really find incredible about this series is how, like I said, it's really imaginative. It is set very, very far in the future, in a world that resembles nothing of our own, that doesn't even remember what our own world was like. So there's really no references with anything. And the way Philip Reeve works around this is by referencing classic literature. There are an awful lot of references to classic literature in this book, even if there are no references. Aside from the cities, the city names, obviously, you've got London with the History Museum. So there are references to a lot of children's classics like Peter Pan, you've got The Lost Boys. There are references to sci-fi, like Hyperion. There are references to Charles Dickens. There are references to pretty much anything you can think of. If it's a classic, it's going to be in there somewhere. And the way Philip Reeve works this in is so pleasing because it just feels so natural. This series is also incredibly dark, especially the last book. And I don't know why it's always children's books. Because I had this same experience with A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, where it was like, this is a 2nd grade kids book. And it is so hard. It is so hard on the reader. And it's like, why? Why is this the way with these 2nd grade kids novels? Because, and I think one of the possible reasons is kids haven't been through the type of experiences, or at least I hope they haven't been through the type of experiences that lead to the types of trauma that the characters in these novels have. And that's one of the things that Philip Reeve does that really nobody else does. I haven't really come across this in any other 2nd grade, or even YA as a general rule. I'm thinking of the Mortal Instruments series right now, and I don't remember the author doing this as well. He really goes where the trauma is, and I've never come across that in a book. To see, especially a lot of these characters are children, and I'm pretty sure that a 13-year-old isn't gonna get the types of behaviors that these kids exhibit, especially the Lost Boys, because the Lost Boys are this undersea organization that they are all stolen from their families at birth and when they're babies, and taken to be Lost Boys. So the Lost Boys are run by this guy called Uncle, who essentially enslaves these children and gets them to go and steal from cities and bring stuff back to him. So it's like a Peter Pan / Oliver Twist type of scenario. And there's this one character that has a very big role in the 3rd and 4th book, this character called Fishcake, who I didn't really care for him much in the 3rd novel. He's there, he leaves the Lost Boys, he goes to Brighton, which is a floating city, because they're called there. The Lost Boys are being called there, but supposedly by their parents. But it turns out they're actually being sold into deadly fighting pits in South America. These are children. And whoever thought up this scheme is we're gonna get these, so we're gonna just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We'll get rid of the Lost Boys that are plaguing our cities with their little thieves, and we can make a shit ton of money by selling these children into deadly fighting pits. Yeah, so that's what Fishcake escapes from in the 3rd novel. But despite this, I still I didn't really care about him. He's a bit of an odd character. There's not much to like about him. Not in the 3rd book, anyway. But in the fourth book, Anna Fang gets turned into a stalker. So the stalkers are like these living dead creatures that are used as soldiers. And she is supposedly destroyed at the end of the third book, but Fishcake finds her. And she is the most notorious stalker, and she leads the Green Storm, and she's ruthless. And at the end of the third book, she is supposedly destroyed by Hester's stalker, but Fishcake finds her, decides to fix her, and she becomes his stalker, as he refers to her. The thing about Anna Fang is, like, she has kind of two personalities in this book. There's the stalker personality, who's very cold and ruthless, unemotional, set on her goals, and doesn't care about humans. She only keeps Fishcake around because she has no eyes and she cannot see, so he serves as her eyes. That's the only reason she keeps him around. But she has moments where she becomes Anna Fang again, and Anna Fang finds herself with this little boy, and she's like, well, why don't you play with toys? Because, you know, you're a little boy, you should be playing with toys. And he's always been a lost boy. His entire world has been being abused by the other lost boys, being abused by Uncle, and stealing stuff from cities. That's all he has ever known. He's never been a child. He's never played. He's never had toys. He doesn't know how to play. There's this section of the book where Anna goes to see one of her apprentices, like her old apprentices, and they wrestle Fishcake into a bath together, and he remembers this as like being one of the best moments of his childhood. Taking a bath. That was the best moment of his childhood. She makes him a little horse, like a little wooden horse, a little toy, and he cries when he gets this toy because he's never had a toy before. And there's a scene where he falls asleep with his head on her lap and he calls her mummy. So this character, this child who is incredibly cold, unemotional, uncaring, is suddenly just completely breaking apart because he's being offered an experience, the experience of being a child that he has never known before. I wept buckets at these scenes. Another character that I really liked and that I mentioned in one of my previous videos is Pennyroyal. And Pennyroyal is he's a Lockhart type of character. He lies about being this incredible adventurer, and he writes all these books about how he went to the American continent and he found all of this archaeological stuff, and how he slept with native women, and all of these adventures that he goes on, these amazing stuff that he does. And none of it's true. He just makes it all up. And eventually, so he's like hailed as this great hero and great archaeologist, but none of it's true. This is just a persona that he's built for himself. He lies about everything. And what I like about his character is, unlike Lockhart, who gets basically torn down at the end of the second Harry Potter book, Pennyroyal perseveres. And he perseveres hard because this character is so subtle and so good at lying and like wriggling his way out of hard situations and eliminating the people who get a bit too nosy in his own way, which makes his character way more believable. He is there right until the very end, and he even has a very important role to play at the end, and I really liked that. I really liked how his character was used, even though he is a very despicable character, and we know as a reader that he is a despicable character, but somebody who has this terrible nature can still be of use. The other thing that I mentioned in the Rock On tag video about this book is how different the characters' perspectives are. And again, how Philip Reeve writes them so convincingly, to the extent that it becomes very scary sometimes. Like I said, so Tom, anything from Tom's perspective, he has a very black and white mind. It's like, this is right, this is wrong. And he is not ever, he doesn't have a problem with vocalizing this. even though it could kind of get him in trouble, he doesn't really have any knowledge of like how big a danger the world is. And on one side it makes him funny, but on the other side it's like everything he does you kind of just, you're like, oh. That's interesting. Hester is extremely, like, she has this very dark side to her. So she's witnessed both of her parents being murdered, and she was also the victim of this murderer, so he left like this great big scar down her face. So she's very disfigured, she's got an eye missing. Then she was raised by this living dead machine. So she also has a very interesting way of seeing the world. She also has a very black and white mind, but it's pretty much the opposite of Tom's. Whereas he tries to see the good side of everything, she sees the bad side of everything, because their experiences of life are so contrasted. They have such contrasted outlooks. So these are both the kind of moral characters. There's a character in the third and fourth book who is a complete and utter psychopath, and she doesn't have a very big role. She has a few scenes from her own POV, and they are terrifying. Like, being inside this girl's mind, how she lived on the Greenstorm side of the world, but her family were Tractionists, and she ended up denouncing them to the Greenstorm, so they got executed because she found them annoying. She had her own parents executed. She wanted to be an actress, and then she like is involved in the murder of this woman, of one of the characters, Dr. Zero, and she is like announces this man's death, this woman's death, to her husband, and he is crying and devastated, and she is so proud of this. She is like, oh, this is my greatest performance because as an actress, because this man is crying so hard because his wife died. Like, and she's proud of this. She is absolutely terrifying. She is cold, calculating, unfeeling, unempathetic. It's wonderful the way Philip Reeve writes these characters with such distinctive views and outlooks. I could not recommend this series enough, no matter how old or young you are. This is absolutely astounding. Just the world, as I said, the world Philip Reeve created that is so far flung from our own, and to bring all of that to life is, this just goes places. Do go and read the Mortal Engine series. So there are 4 books in this series in order: The Mortal Engines, Predator's Gold, Infernal Devices, and A Darkling Plane. And I will definitely pick up the sequels. I've ordered the Anna Fang book, so I'll be reading that one, hopefully in the not too far future.
And now for something completely different.
Today's album recommendation is Varioina Kylieme Kyaleiden Massa, which is Finnish for As a Shadow I Walk in the Land of the Dead. This album is by Moonsaro, which is my favourite band in the whole entire world. This is a pagan black metal band from Finland, and this album tells the story of a group of individuals who are trying to survive a post-apocalyptic world with extraordinarily haunting music. As I said, this is my absolute #1 favourite band in the world. It's very dark, but I guarantee it's worth it. So do go give it a spin. Varioina Kylieme Kyaleiden Massa by Moonsaro. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Don't hesitate to tell me your thoughts in the comments. Love, share, and don't hesitate to subscribe. Read books and listen to metal, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.